And welcome everybody. And it's nice to be here at PLA again. I always enjoy coming to the PLA conference. I'm going to dive right in. I probably have a lot of slides to show you, so we're going to move through this material rather quickly. One of the things I'm going to tell you about is two of the classes that I teach at San Jose State. One is called the Hyperlinked Library. This is a word cloud for that class. The other one is on transformative learning and new literacy. So I'll be talking about those classes as we go through this material today. But let me start with something that Arthur C. Clarke said. He said, any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. Do you recognize this? For those following along at home, not the beautiful yellow dog back there, but the bottle, that's one of the I Dream of Jeannie bottles. And what that really is a 1964 Jim Beam decanter. And I discovered, after always thinking that bottle was super duper cool on I Dream of Jeannie, that you could order them from eBay and it would appear at your house in like 2 days, like magic. Nick Bilton in I Live in the Future and Here's How It Works, he also talks about the magic of technology. And he goes back and he talks about the printing press and how this freaked people out. This freaked people out too. They thought the world was going to end because people were going to get telephones in their homes. He actually cites a columnist saying that if phones are in every home, people will never want to go outside again. And have we heard that about recent technologies? Clay Shirky, in the book Cognitive Surplus, talks about how institutions can approach emerging technologies. And he says there are 3 ways that they might do that. The first one is as much chaos as we can stand as an organization. The second is very traditional. It sort of goes through the traditional channels. It's the way that it's always been done. The third is a negotiated transaction. Which do you think Shirky advocates for? Absolutely, I saw somebody say it, as much chaos as we can stand. Now, it's kind of interesting, a lot of the work I've been doing the last few years, I've been advocating for negotiated transaction. But it's kind of fun to think about chaos and what that means. And if we just understand that we're going to be within this certain realm of chaos in our libraries, in our public libraries, maybe that's what this means, as much chaos as we can stand, and we define that. So I want to take you through 3 areas of emerging trends and emerging technologies very quickly. Here they are. The first one is mobile and geosocial information environments. And that's that whole idea, as a bartender once said to me across the bar, I have the world of information in my hand, talking about his smartphone. And it's amazing. I see 2 iPads out in the audience right now that we're carrying around devices that actually link us up more than ever before. Pew Internet and American Life, they had some folks look at the future and they theorized that by 2020, this will be our primary device for connecting to the world of information. Here's a nice example from Santa Clara County Library of a mobile app designed for a smartphone. And here's the British Library app, and I'm really impressed with this one because I get to browse the collection of the library, not in the library, but in the palm of my hand. And I think that's very important going forward. It gets more interesting though when we talk about location-aware information environments and the concept of the hyperlocal. Maybe some of you have checked in on Foursquare here at the conference. Anyone? Any Foursquare users? Foursquare is a sort of game social site that allows us to tell our group of friends or the world, depending on how far you want to go, where you are and what you were doing. I was able to check in here at the conference. I'm able to check in if I go out to dinner or whatever. Here's an example. I was visiting Hagia Sophia in Istanbul. And one of the things that Foursquare does is it allows users to leave tips behind associated geographically with a place. So I was able to read in the Foursquare tips when I was there, don't miss the recently uncovered 4th century paintings of the angel, Michael, the archangel. So I was able to go inside and see that, and it was very impressive, and I might have missed it if I hadn't known. And really, direct engagement can be an incredibly powerful thing, and these tools allow that. I checked into a hotel in the Netherlands recently, and it welcomed me. I was at Foursquare. I checked in on Foursquare. It welcomed me and said, "Don't forget to get your goodie bag," for just checking into the hotel, and it had 2 tickets to the local museum in it. Here's the Barrington Area Library. Just got to see a couple of the folks from Barrington here on the exhibit floor. They have a Foursquare presence, and they have a special offer in Foursquare. Every 10th check-in you have at the library, you get to take a book from the librarian's secret stash. And who doesn't like the concept of the secret stash? If you check in enough times at a library, you get a bookworm badge, and I actually have gotten one of those. It's kind of fun. And we're hurtling toward sort of the augmented reality, the layers of information, accessible VR devices. This is just a prototypical what it might look like to point my phone at Frank Lloyd Wright's home and studio in Oak Park, Illinois, and see bubbles of information appear out of nowhere. This absolutely fascinates me, that we may be hurtling toward a time in our work we do in public libraries of this is a mouthful, you ready? Geospatial information, curation, and stewardship. Meaning, we're going to help people take care of all this information that we are assigning to geographic locations. We may also become embedded local experts, meaning we may be out in these hyper-local spaces answering questions. The next area I want to focus on is participatory library service and creation space. And I'm kind of excited about this. Participatory library service is one of the models that I teach in my course, the Hyperlinked Library. Has 3 parts. The first part is it engages users to add to library services. The next part is it offers the chance for users to plan alongside with librarians. So you're planning for services, you're planning for changes. There's a whole level of transparency here as well when we talk about this topic. And it offers a mechanism for evaluation of looking at what we're doing, how well we're doing, and evaluating all of the services that might be new services or services that we have changed. So one of my favorite examples from the Dock Library in Delft in the Netherlands, they use a Microsoft Service Table to tap into their Flickr account. And kids can come in and play with the Flickr photos on the Surface Table. You know, kids love this kind of like swoopy technology thing. I think everybody loves the Surface Table. So it becomes very interactive. I think it's a good example of creating a technology to engage with users. They also have a Genius Bar at this library that handles technology questions. And the day that I was there on my tour, it was eBooks Day. I think every day in libraries right now is eBook Help Day, but they had a young lady stationed at the Genius Bar to help people download ebooks and just sort of learn how to use their devices. It's another one of my favorite examples. This is a Twitter example, again, of sort of participation and being human. This is Christchurch Library in New Zealand. They have a Twitter account, and some of you may have a Twitter account at your public library. But what they do, and you'll see there along the side, is they put everyone's photo that contributes to that Twitter account up along the side with initials. So if you tweet for them, you sign your tweets with your initials. And I'm fascinated by that because I can actually associate a tweet with a person's face, thus giving the library more of a human face. This is Highland Park Public Library outside of Chicago. I recently got to spend a day with them, and I did a talk in this room, and they told me before we started that every seat in the room was for sale or had been purchased, and this is the family that bought the seat that the gentleman is sitting in, and they could actually have a plaque put on the back of it with whatever they would like it to say. And what they chose was, "Oh, the places that you will go." So this is a very real world, in the physical world example, but it's so incredible to me that they have, they're actually part of the library by sharing themselves and what they chose to put on their seat. And when these 2 kids grow up, they'll be able to visit the library and still see the chair that their parents endowed. This is Evansville Public Library, very impressive thing they did with a reading program a couple years ago. They actually had local businesses put on their signs that a library detective works here, meaning they were aligned with the library and the mystery reading program that they were doing. And it's really, they have a whole Flickr set of all the different businesses that did this. Then we move into Creation Space. It's a wonderful book by Dr. Mimi Ito called Hanging Out, Messing Around, and Geeking Out. She pulled in a whole bunch of folks to write about how young people use emerging technologies. One of the things that came out of that, funded through IMLS, MacArthur Foundation, is the U Media Project at Chicago Public Library, which is a space totally devoted to young people for creating, hanging out, playing games, and just sort of being themselves. And it's an absolutely fascinating model that I believe IMLS just funded another handful of libraries to duplicate this model in other places. So this is one to look at. This would be something I'd like y'all to take away for sure today. Skokie Public Library has a digital media lab, very similar, and they are sharing creations made in the lab with their public. And this is a young lady in high school who made her family history. And the librarian said, can we share this on YouTube? And she's like, heck yeah, you guys help me. And so it's out there for folks to see. Back to Doc, just to share with you their sort of mantra or one of their taglines. This is the library in Holland that gets so much good press. They strive to keep stories, share stories, and make stories. So that last piece is what we're looking at with Creation Space, is we're actually making stories that then become part of the library's collection. San Mateo Public Library has a digital storytelling project where they are gathering stories about the community from the community. And here's the reason that they're doing it. It doesn't have to be a huge, gigantic project. You don't have to spend $1 million. Two Rivers, so this is in Wisconsin, does oral histories. They put them onto DVD, CD, and they allow people to check them out. This is something that would be very easy to do. And I know the flip is like not made anymore, they're not gonna be made anymore, but just having one of these little video cameras or some little recording device, you are good to go for gathering your community's memory. Again, Creation Space, you might also think about having an artist in residence. Again, sort of that place-based, something happening within the library to pull people in. And I'm really, really interested in the Fab Lab at Fayetteville Library in New York State, where they're actually pulling together fabrication machines in a laboratory for people not to make digital artifacts, but actually to fabricate things. And this is absolutely something to watch for the future of what we may be doing in public libraries. Finally, I want to talk very briefly about learning and new literacies. And I want to tell you a little bit about Learning 2.0. And let me just ask the folks that are listening right now, how many of you have been in a 23 Things or Learning 2.0 program at your library? Okay, good, just a couple folks. One of the things, and this is a quote from Stephen Abram, one of the things that I've been researching and that I've been working on with my students is looking at the impact of Learning 2.0 in public libraries. And here's a word cloud of some of our early data from a project I did in Australia. We found that if you have gone through the program, you are more comfortable, you are more confident taking on emerging tech. That if you figured out how to blog and you figured out how to use the Twitter, that it's much easier then to take on the next thing. What is the next big thing? Pinterest, messing with ebooks, whatever it might be, folks are more comfortable. A little bit of the data here for you. Strongly agree to this question. After a Learning 2.0 program, I'm more comfortable learning about new technologies. That was a very positive number. Here's another one. I'm confident that I can learn these things. Again, a very high number. Back to Highland Park. I was at their staff day, and one of the things they did before I did my talk was they had a technology petting zoo for the entire library staff. You know, this is staff development day, the library is closed. Again, this is a model that you all could duplicate, and they had stations around the main large part of their library, and you could, for example, put your hands on an iPad or an ebook reader, and you had a passport. You had a passport to new technologies, and if you went, this is like Learning 2.0 in the real world, if you went and had every circle stamped at each table, you got put in a drawing for an iPad, or I think it was a Kindle. And they actually partnered with Best Buy for this, which was really interesting to me. So Best Buy was there, the Geek Squad was there, showing off some stuff that the library didn't have, but stuff that maybe people at home had, so they could find out more about it. So one of the things that I stress with this part, with this culture of learning for libraries, is to make sure that everyone is learning. For sure, the staff, that we're given opportunities to learn, as well as our users, because we want to keep them learning for life, absolutely. And that brings me to my last point today, and I do appreciate your attention, is anytime we talk about technology, I would be remiss in saying we're not really talking about technology. We're talking about how we can connect to our users, how we can connect to our users on a level of the human heart. So keep that in mind, that it should be like magic, and let the technology fall away, and just think of it that you're looking for one more way that you might do outreach, or that you might find a way to make that little connection with someone that you hadn't had a chance to do so before. Randy Pausch said in the last lecture, in the book he wrote, that there's more than one way to measure profits and losses, and on every level, institutions can and should have a heart. The cool thing is, libraries have always had a heart. We just have to keep that in mind as more and more of our services become technology-based. So, are you ready for the lightning round? We're going to do this really quickly. How can we go forward? A few things to remember. Know that stories have power. Know that telling your library story and involving your users in it is one of the most important things you can do. You're telling the community story. Extend the mission with emerging technologies. Why are we doing social tools? Why are we doing social networks? Because it extends the mission of the library. Evaluate everything we do. Look at everything you're doing. Is there something that can roll off? Is there something that you've always done that you don't need to be doing anymore? It would free up some more time to do something maybe that's more useful or more interesting. Always be learning. One of the best things about coming to a conference like this is getting the chance to learn from the people you're sitting with before the program starts, and from the presenters, and from everywhere you happen to be. But always be learning. And have fun. This stuff should be fun. The minute that it doesn't become fun, there's a problem, and we need to find a way to fix it. And know that it's okay to mess up. We don't talk about that enough in what we do. It's really easy to get up here and say, here's our success story. I want to also hear about how you messed up, and how chaotic it got, and how you fixed it. And look for the connections that you can make with your users. Look for every way that you might reach out to them. And develop your own personal learning network. And that's one of the offshoots of Learning 2.0 that I think is becoming more and more clear. For those librarians that have been through the program, or really for those library staff that have been through this program, they are setting up for the rest of their time in libraries, or maybe the rest of their lives, their own personal learning network, that they're still probably going to be reading RSS feeds and looking at blogs and all the other things that they learned about in the program. Involve your users every step of the way. I was very lucky to write a column with Michael Casey called The Transparent Library in Library Journal for a couple of years, and almost every column we wrote was about engaging and involving our users in an open and transparent way. And finally, be creative. Look for ways to do things that you've never done before. Exercise that right part of your brain that Daniel Pink talks about, and be as creative as you can, and be human. Bring yourself, as much as yourself as you can, to what you're doing. And be kind. Let's be nice to each other in all of these spaces. I get kind of irked sometimes when I see snarky people. And please remember the heart. Remember to bring your heart with you in everything you do. And especially going forward, and it's so easy to get caught up in so much the drama and the kerfuffle and everything, let the heart drive change. As you go forward with strategic planning, absolutely, let the heart drive change. And we've reached the end. And if anybody wants to chat, here's my contact information. Thank you for that whirlwind tour. Thanks.